I'm your host, Carmilla, and this is Cat Scratch Radio, a horror podcast. Hey everybody, this is Cat Scratch Radio. I'm your host, Carmilla Mays, and I'm here with young adult author Jessica Lewis. So, Jessica, please tell me about yourself.
I'm Jessica. I'm a full-time writer from Alabama, and I write YA horror. I also write YA romance and middle grade contemporary, so I wear a lot of hats. But horror is my favorite genre.
I love that. Horror is my favorite genre as well, but I also dabble in fantasy.
Oh yeah, love fantasy, love sci-fi. I love a lot of things.
Yeah, same. So it's an obligatory ask for everybody who comes on the show. What is your favorite scary movie?
I actually scare very easily, so I don't know if I have a favorite scary movie, but when I was little, Final Destination really scared me. So I don't know if it's my favorite, but I was traumatized. So it's on up there.
Yeah, that's a good answer though. It's a scary movie. So what inspired you to write and why horror?
I've always loved to write, even as a young kid. In fourth grade, I won a contest and I got my handwritten, hand illustrated book in the library for a year. And I feel like I've been chasing that high ever since. It was just so nice to be able to go to the library and then I see my book on the shelf. And so I've wanted that my whole life. Horror was not my first genre. My very first book was a sci-fi. But I have PTSD, and one of the symptoms is really vivid nightmares. And so it kind of felt like I should at least monetize my suffering. But I have really come to love the genre, and I read a lot of it, and I think it's an excellent vehicle for storytelling.
Yeah, I like that answer a lot. For me, I also have PTSD, so I totally understand where you're coming from, and I love the idea of, utilizing horror as a vehicle for your suffering.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's I know some people get like flashbacks. I don't get flashbacks. I just get like really vivid nightmares. Um and they're always like really random stuff. So I feel like I should just, if my brain is cooking that up anyway, I might as well
write it out.
Do it.
Yeah. So what got you into horror?
I think everybody probably says this, but Goosebumps as a kid. I really loved those books. Scary stories to tell in the dark, stuff like Bunnicula. I was always so fascinated with horror as a kid. And I kind of fell off as I got older just because as a kid I wasn't as scared, but like when I got to middle school and high school I got more scared, I think. But then I circled back to it when I was a young adult.
Yeah, I think I consumed all of the Goosebumps books when they came out.
I had to have read like 100 of them.
Yeah, I read so many of them. I wanted to take R.L. Stine's master class that he has for writing, but I still haven't done it.
Oh, yeah. That would be so nice.
Right? So what scares you? You said a little bit of everything.
Yes, but particularly zombies.
Oh, really?
Yes, they are my number one fear.
Why is that?
I guess, this is not my original idea, but I read an interview with the writer of Attack on Titan, and he summed it up perfectly. He said, the idea of a person that cannot be reasoned with is the scariest thing in the world. That's what a zombie is.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's like when somebody's in an irrational rage and you can't reason with them. That's really scary.
Yeah, so it scares me a lot. And then also like the idea of just like turning depending on the story, because sometimes it's really fast, but if it's slow, I think that's just awful. To know that you're gonna die and you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision to protect you and the other people. And it's just like, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can see how that could be really scary. I actually did an episode on zombies with author Bethany Perry, and we had a lot of fun talking about that and the romanticization of zombies with movies like shows like iZombie.
Oh yeah, because I love iZombie. I think it's really funny. But and then stuff like Santa Clarita Diet, I love that
Hmm.
show.
Yeah.
But like actually, like if it was actually zombies, no way.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not living through that. Like forget it. No.
Fair. Yeah. So you're definitely not the person that would get bit and hide it from everybody.
Well, you never know, right? Like it
True.
depends on who you're traveling with. Like if I just hate them, I'd be like, oh well, I got something coming for you guys.
That's valid. So where do you think horror is going to be in the next 5 years?
I think that's a good question. I think we're in a bit of a renaissance right now. I see a lot of horror coming out from diverse authors, from women particularly, and I think that's really exciting. I think horror games are really in their element right now. Um, and I think I see horror romance kind of taken off, like we said with iZombie and Santa Clarita Diet. That's like horror comedy, but I think horror romance is kind of kicking off again, like in the Twilight era. Although I wouldn't say Twilight's horror, but like that kind of thing, like monster horror and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think there was a movie that recently came out in the last couple of years that's a romance horror that is kind of about cannibals. I'm trying
Oh,
to
that's
remember.
amazing.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's I will probably put it in the notes for this episode, but I can't remember to save my life right now. But
Okay,
it
let me know because I'm curious.
when I figure it out, I'll email you and be like, "Hey, this is the one that I remember it now."
Yes. And then I think like subversive horror is coming back, like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Uh-huh.
Movies like that. I think those are really taking off now. So I hope there's gonna be like a lot more, just like more in general, but I think horror is becoming like more respected. Because I think in the old times, like maybe like, 90s, 80s, horror was like real campy and people didn't really take it seriously. But
Hmm.
I think that's changing.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's getting far more traction, and I'm seeing a lot more horror movies coming out in theaters, and not just during like October.
Yeah, and not just during January where everybody, knows that you don't go to the movies in January because it's always terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think they're coming out year round, so that's
Yeah.
that's a good sign.
So what are some book or movie recommendations you have for the for my listeners?
So books, my favorite horror is always something that's like not like super super scary. Like I'm not a big fan of like slashers in books. I think they're better in movie form, but I love psychological horror. So, Bunny by Mona Wad. It's a little light on the horror, but I think it still counts. And then Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. Fantastic book. It's one of my favorites. And then a recent favorite has been Last to Leave the Room by Caitlin Starling. That book I feel like was written for me. Like I was into it from page one. And I don't know if other people will be into it, but I was into it. It's one of my favorite books now I've ever read.
I love that. Um, I think my favorite book so far has still been Mexican Gothic, and I just have not
Mm,
like I have not unlatched from that being my favorite book for a while.
yeah, I
Uh,
feel that.
but I did figure out what the movie was. It's
Oh,
called
okay.
Bones and All.
Oh, I think I saw a trailer for that.
Yeah, I've seen the trailer for it. I haven't seen it. It's on Prime. I plan on watching it, but it's a horror romance, and I'm super into the concept.
Love it. I'm into it.
Okay, so some fun stuff. Tell me about your most recent work in progress.
So I'm pretty secretive about my WIPs. But I will tell you, I'm currently working on a zombie book. So, because it is really scary to me. But the book that's on submission that I can talk about, it's actually a horror romance. It's
Oh,
a yeah, it's a vampire book. It follows a vampire hunter, very reminiscent of a noir detective,
hmm.
and she falls in love with a vampire. So it's
Love
very
that.
fun. Yeah, it's the vampires, besides the love interest, are very scary. They're not sexy. They are scary. And they move a little bit like zombies. They're more like feral, and they're more like treated like pests. So you have to like kill them. like you
Ah.
would a rat infestation.
Hmm.
And so the love interest is one of the only intelligent vampires who's able to kind of hold it together. So
Oh,
she's a
that's
new,
crazy.
yeah, a new type. So it's
I
fun.
like that. That's kind of a twist on the vampire take. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think just for me personally, I like vampires when they are scary. Like I like
Hmm.
them when they are manipulative and when they are kind of like smooth talking and then you get in too deep and then they catch you. I like that. I'm not super into the like, oh, I'm 100 years old and I'm chasing a 16-year-old. I don't I don't love that.
Yeah. I've seen Twilight, I've read the books, and I still don't get it. Uh,
Yeah, you know what? I was a target audience. I was 12 years old when I was reading it. I was like, yes, this is high art, at the time. But as you grow older, you're like, I don't
but maybe
know.
not. Just maybe
They
not.
still have a soft. I have a soft spot, especially the first movie. I think because it's so low budget, like they had the budget of like a ham sandwich. Just like they knew what they were doing. They knew it was kind of goofy, and I think they leaned into it. So I always have a soft spot for that first movie.
Yeah, I actually seen the first movie twice in theaters because it came out around my birthday, and my aunt and uncle took me to go see it, and then my gay uncle was like, "I really want to go see the Twilight movies, but you have to come with me." And I was like, "Okay,
Okay.
okay, I'll go see it again."
Oh, my funny theater story with Twilight. I think I was 16. I think. Yeah. And I was going to see Eclipse with my friends. And I went to the counter to pay for my ticket and the teller was like, this movie's PG-13.
Oh
I
no.
was like, I'm 16 years old. Please just let me see this movie I know will be terrible. Please don't make a scene.
Oh my God. I get clocked for my age all the time, and I've had waiters like tell me that they thought my driver's license was fake.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I am from head to toe, or I guess like neck to toe, covered in tattoos. So every time somebody confuses me for being under 21, I'm like, okay, but how did I get this many tattoos in such a short period of time?
Right. Yeah. I feel you. I have such like a baby face that everybody's like, I don't know. So yeah, it's fine.
Now, I still have that baby face into my 30s, so, you know.
Yeah, I feel that.
So tell me about your published works and which one's your favorite?
It's like picking a favorite child. You know, it's hard.
True.
But okay, so my very first book, Bad Witch Burning, it's about
Ooh.
a girl who raises the dead for money. And I really love that book because the main character, Cottrell, she is the most intense, gritty protagonist I've ever written. She wants the love of her mother so badly that she will do anything to achieve it, even, raise the dead. And I just love that book because it's an exploration on poverty and grief and depression and just like being so driven for a goal that you burn down everything around you just to achieve it and it's not worth it. So I will always love my firstborn book. But my second book, Monstrous, that one is it's kind of the complete opposite. So it's about a girl who's sacrificed to a monster in the woods, but instead of eating her, he makes her a deal. If she helps him out of his prison, he will help her get revenge on the town that tried to kill her. So she obviously accepts this deal. Which it also sounds very dark, but the tone is much lighter. So the monster talks. He's a giant snake. He's really funny. And it ends up becoming kind of like a buddy cop, but like if they were killing people. So,
A buddy cop with murder.
yes, it's a little bit of a horror comedy. Like it's dark subject material, and my main character has PTSD from the attack. She was a runner, and then the town broke her leg, so she will never run again. And she's very, like there it is like a lot, but whenever the snake is on the screen, we're buddying it up, we're killing people, we're arguing over the best way to kill people. It's really fun.
I love that. That is hilarious. I really really love horror comedy like a lot. I like the mixture of that lighthearted comedy aspect with something so dark and sinister.
Yeah, I think horror and comedy are like they're right there together. There it's so easy to make something so campy that it leans into comedy. And then comedy can be so dark that it ends up being like, oh, this is kind of not funny. So it's yeah, they're like they're best friends. So I love putting them together.
Yeah, definitely. So what is something readers would be really surprised to find out about you?
I mentioned it before, but I scare very easily. I can't watch horror movies. It's a lot for me. I feel like I see the imagery in my head over and over again, so I really avoid them. I watched Haunting of Hill House, and I didn't sleep for like 4 days, so
Oh
I
my
just
gosh.
can't do it. Yeah, I just cannot do horror movies. Books are easier because if I get too scared, I can just close it, so it's not as bad. Um, but then also, I am a self-professed soft girl, so I love pink. I love very girly things. But also, I love books about cannibals, and I want to read about giant snakes. And so, it's a very interesting dichotomy. I write romance as well, so I always say like this is my two sides. I write romance where it's really fluffy and cute, and then I also write like people, you know, killing other people.
Yeah, sometimes you have to have both. It's about balance.
Exactly. I feel like you can have both. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
Yeah.
I personally my lit agent has she has my book right now that she's going over it, but it's about this woman who is like investigating an academy, and because she's pretty sure that they're the cause of who murdered her friend like 15 years ago, and she gets a job there under the guise she gets a job there as a professor, and
Mhm.
she's investigating it at night and everything, but she falls in love with the librarian, and it turns out like the librarian's a murderer, and it gets all twisted up and everything. It's really intense, but um I loved writing it. I loved having those romantic scenes kind of dashed in with the horror.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you almost need it. You need something that brings levity to the situation.
Hmm.
So yeah, I really like that. I like that premise. So let me know how it goes.
Hopefully it'll go on sub eventually and actually go somewhere.
No, I feel you. Fingers crossed. Sub is like I mean, we can talk about it later if you want, but it sucks. I'm just telling
It
the
does
audience
suck.
that it sucks.
It does suck. I've already had a book die on sub, and like, oh, it's one of the most disheartening things in the world.
It's so miserable. They drag it out too. It's just, yeah.
Hmm.
Just like tell me if you don't want it. Like the first day, don't just hold it on your desk for 10 months.
Yeah. The worst thing for me was a lot of the editors came back talking about how amazing my writing is and how much they would love to work with me. And it's like, but not this book.
Uh, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really is. It's just so painful. And it was really hard for me because I poured my heart and soul into that book. So I was like, okay, time to write a little bit of my other stuff and try to not think about that. Maybe I'll get my foot in the door somewhere, and then that book will come back to light.
Yeah, that's one good thing because like my vampire one has been on sub for 4 months, so that's kind of like it's a little long. Um, and because my other two sold very quickly, so I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, I need to start preparing for this possibly being a death. Um, but it's not dead forever. So if I sell something else, I can always present the vampire one to the editor
Mhm.
and be like, hey, I have this other one. So
Yeah, exactly. And that's my hope, is that like one of my books will make it through, and I can be like, "Oh, if you really like this, you might really love this one."
mm-hmm. And then if your editor is, they like you, then they'll be like, oh, well, this one got rejected for X, Y, and Z. Here's how we can fix it. So that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always the thing is I always hope for more like really good feedback from editors.
Yeah. And it's a mixed bag. We can talk about that later if you want to. Publishing sucks. It's not a fun topic. We're
Publishing
in the
does
fun
suck.
section.
So, are any of your stories inspired from personal experience?
Bad Witch Burning is pretty much a magical autobiography. So I cannot raise the dead. Just disclaimer. I don't know how to do that. But I definitely struggled with a manipulative parent, and I hung on longer than I should, and I was super broke, so broke I couldn't even like. I had to eat ramen noodles for every meal, and even then, it was like, you know. So, I that book I put a lot of myself into.
Yeah, that's really hard because I also have struggled with uh, narcissistic behavior in my life and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
mine was from a romantic partner, unfortunately.
Oh
And
yeah,
I understand how hard it is to pull away from that because you just feel like it's going to work at some point, but it's never going to work.
yeah, and that realization is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. So, in my book, I had her realize it, pretty early on. But for me, I didn't get away until maybe 23, something like that. It took me years to get out of it. So,
Yeah, I was with my ex for 9 years, so I totally understand.
oh yeah, they just like get their hooks in you. You just can't find a way out. It sucks.
It
But
does.
I really wanted kids who were in that situation. I wanted them to see that it is possible and like this behavior is not okay. So I was really important for me to share because if I had had something like that when I was 16, maybe it wouldn't have taken me so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the best things about young adult is that it can teach lessons that we as adults have already learned.
Hmm. And I wish that somebody had taught me at that age.
Yeah, definitely. So, what's your favorite form of horror and why?
I actually really love horror anime, but with the caveat, it is so difficult to get right in anime. Um, and a lot of times they really don't do it well. um, but then I also love horror games. I think they're so cool, and I think they are just like limitless potential in horror games. And you can do like it really is like your creativity. So I think it's a really cool mix of the visuals from a movie and then the narrative structure of a book, and you put it together and you get like a really cool game.
Yeah, I really love horror games. I don't know how many you've played, but Hell's Blade is it let me see if am saying the name right. It's a really, really good game. It honestly, I played through it. It's yeah, called Hellblade. Um,
Okay.
and I played through it, and the main character in it has like really bad PTSD to the point where she hears audible voices and sees things.
Oh wow.
So
See, like I just feel like that's so cool that you can do that in a game.
hmm And experiencing that in the game world was really hard for me because I understand like a lot of PTSD symptoms and stuff like that, having experienced them myself. So I felt like I had to sometimes pause the game and walk away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a scaredy cat. I also don't have a console. So I just watch it. I watch other people play.
That's totally
And
fair.
yeah, but I think it's easier that way for me because there's a degree of separation. So
hmm
even though like the game is tough or hard or scary, then there's somebody else with you that's also experiencing the same thing. So it's easier for me to consume that content versus a movie that I'm watching myself.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I'd prefer to watch my movies with people, but not everybody likes to watch horror movies, so I watch a lot by myself.
It's scary. I can't do it.
My
But
problem
yeah,
is that a lot of horror movies are bad.
yeah, that's another thing.
Yeah. So, what is your least favorite form of horror?
Um, I don't love horror movies with jump scares because a jump scare to me is not being scared. You're being startled, and that's not
hmm
the same. Um, I feel like a lot of movies confuse that. And so they just put in the pointless jump scare, and you're like, ah, but you're not really scared. So, and
Yeah,
then I also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I also don't love slashers in books. I like slasher movies, but I don't like slashers in books. So,
See, I haven't read any slashers in books, personally. I did read The Only Good Indians. Have you read that?
yeah, didn't love it.
Did not love it. That's the
No.
closest to a slasher book that I've gotten to, and the intense brutality towards women especially was a lot for
Ooh,
me.
yeah, it was a lot. And pets.
And
If
yeah,
you like animals, do not read that book.
yeah, do not read that book
It's
if you like
rough.
animals. It is
Yeah.
a really hard read, and I powered through it and I finished it, even though there was a lot more basketball in it than I ever expected a book to have.
There was a lot. It was quite a bit. I was very surprised.
Yeah, I was like, this is a lot of basketball. I get that he's trying to use it as a like a comparison here, but this is a lot of basketball.
Yeah. I I think that book I still really liked it. I still gave it like a 3.5. So, and it's on my
Mhm.
shelf. I only keep books that I really love on my shelf. So, I think I really appreciated what he was doing. It was just not the story for me.
Oh yeah,
So, yeah.
I was
I think it was
not the
very
right
well written,
audience.
but yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I did like the basketball part. It would surprise me, but I was like, oh, I'm kind of into it.
See, it's it's there for somebody. I'm not a big sports person, which is funny because I played sports all through middle school and high school. So you'd think
Yeah,
I'd be more
I'm
into
not
it.
big on sports either, but I did play basketball when I was younger, and I really liked it. So I think that's why I enjoyed that part.
See, I'm only 5 foot, so basketball
I
and I
mean, me
we're not
too.
friends. Are you really?
Yeah, yeah, I'm 5'2".
Oh, you got two
So,
inches on me. It's okay.
but it's not good for basketball.
No, no, definitely not sorted for basketball. Uh,
No.
no offense to Muggsy Bugs, but
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough if you're a short person. But I played when I was like younger, when everybody was kind of short, so it was okay. But then everybody grew up, and I was like, oh, I'm not good at this anymore. So I
see,
quit.
in high school I played volleyball, and being able to be positioned in the back row made that so much easier for me. So like they knew better than to put me in the front because I'm not gonna be able to spike that ball over the net. I could barely touch the top of the net.
No, I feel that. I commend you for playing volleyball because I was always really terrible at it. I'm not good at sports except for basketball. Every sport I've tried, I'm like, I am worthless at this.
I think volleyball's the only thing I've ever been good at it sports wise. I am terrible at everything else. Terrible at bowling, especially, but love to bowl.
Well, I think everybody's supposed to be terrible at bowling. I think that's the appeal of bowling. Nobody's good at it. And if you are, you're a freak. But we love you. But you're still a freak.
You're a freak that we
Nobody's
love.
good. Yes. And I'm impressed. I'm like, how? How are you good at bowling? Nobody's good at bowling.
It is totally fair. I love that. Just that whole bit was very hilarious. I'm sorry. trying trying to catch myself here. Okay. So, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
So I got this advice from my poetry teacher, which is so odd to say. I'm not good at poetry. I never have been. But it is the most valuable class I've ever taken on writing because it teaches you how to be concise and it teaches you how to have an image that people can see when they read your work and teaches you how to be inventive and different. So that class was the most valuable class. And my teacher, she said, make the unintentional intentional. So when you write your first draft, you're just going to dump everything on the page, but your brain is still working on a subconscious level. So if you see a seed that's planted, a theme or an image that recurs over your book, then you water that seed and you make it purposeful in your next round.
Yes, I love that. Oh my God. That is something that I do, especially with character development, is that when I'm doing rewrites, I take whatever I built in my first draft and I just embellish on it and build it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the best way because like you have an idea of what you want to say, even if you don't know what it is yet. And then when you read it back, you're like, oh, I focused on, I don't know, like a deer image here, or
Hmm.
in chapter 32, there's like some kind of animal, thing, and then you just make that purposeful and not on accident.
Yeah, so it's like my current work in progress. I didn't realize I was writing a psychological thriller until almost halfway through it.
Ooh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and I just kind of fell into it now because the main character has CPTSD and she has
Hmm.
psychosis. So, um, she is used to hearing things and seeing things and sometimes smelling like phantom smells and stuff like that. And so for her, she has to take medication to help with that psychosis. But as the story goes on, like her medication seems to not be working.
Mm.
I don't want to give too much of it away, but like that's like the premise, and it all ends up being real in the end.
Ooh, that's cool. I
So,
love playing with stuff like that, like with the mind and like what you see
mhm.
versus what is real and what's actually there. Can you trust yourself? And oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I love it. I didn't even realize I was doing it, and then when I realized it literally yesterday that I was doing it, and I was like, oh, I'm leaning into this hard.
Yeah, I love that. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I am both. So I will plot act one and then write, and if something magical comes out of me as I'm writing, I let it happen.
Hmm.
And then I will plot act two and do the exact same thing, and then I will plot act three and let it go from there.
Oh, that's cool. I've never done one like that.
Yeah, it's the only thing that works for me because if I don't do it that way, I forget to write the middle.
That's fair.
I just want to like write the beginning and get right to the ending.
No, I totally feel that. I'm a plotter. So, and I do that because I'm so forgetful. I think that's ADHD more than PTSD, but
Mhm.
I am very forgetful. I If I go into the next room, I'm like, what am I here for? That happens to me like multiple times every day. So, I have to plot it out over a couple of weeks just to make sure that everything kind of makes sense and I'm not on like the wrong track. So, but I did try pantsing once. My snake book, the Monstrous, it was actually a pantsed book.
Oh,
I
that's
just
really
wanted to,
cool.
yeah, I just wanted to see, like you have to try different options just to
Yeah,
see if
definitely.
yours is the best for you. But then I spent 3 years editing that book, and I was like, well, I'm never doing that again. So
Oh yeah, definitely understand that. I can't fully pants a book. It would, I think, make me crazy.
oh, it did, it really did.
As an aside note, though, I also want to like lead my listeners to actually check out your book covers, because as a somebody who's in graphic design professionally, they just need to see how awesome your book covers are because I love that they went out of their way to make sure there was a person of color on the cover. The
Yep.
the font is beautiful and the colors are really vibrant. I love that about both of your covers.
Yeah, they did a really good job. I was really happy. Um, my romance cover is actually really good as well. It's not what this podcast is about, but if you want to check out the romance one too. But yeah, I really fought to have a black girl front and center because when I was growing up, there were no black books, and I
Hmm.
really mean that sincerely. I was an avid reader. I had nothing, and to the point that when I started writing, I my main characters were white because I did not know that you could even. I didn't know it was allowed, like subconsciously.
Right.
Yeah, and then when I got a little older and there's more of a push for diverse work, I was like, oh, like why am I writing white characters? Like that's dumb. But it was just in my head that if you write a book, it has to be a white main character because that's all I had ever read my whole life.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it was very important for me, like for black kids to see like this book is for you, is written by someone who wrote it with you in mind.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that they went with that and just both covers are so beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Uh,
I think
yeah.
they did good.
I'm biracial. I'm half Native American. So I know you've like a little bit of what you mean, like growing up not seeing yourself in books. And
Mm-hmm.
seeing biracial characters in general is very rare. So
Yeah, I think so too. It's very, I don't know. I don't know about publishing. Like I said, it sucks. It sucks on
publishing sucks.
multiple.
Yeah.
We just file it under that car.
Okay, so I have some really fun questions for you now.
Okay.
So, have you ever been to a haunted house? And I don't mean the ones where they set it up to be a haunted house.
Oh, like a for real haunted house.
Yeah, it's like somebody said this house is haunted.
No, because I don't believe in ghosts.
Fair, neither do I.
Yeah, but I will say I did go to a haunted corn maze once, and on the very first, like the very first scare, it was a guy dressed up as like the Grim Reaper, and he jumped out, and my knees collapsed.
Oh no.
So then he was like, "Oh shit, are you okay?" I'm like stopping in the middle of a corn maze. My friends were like so embarrassed.
Oh no. I absolutely love like theatrical haunted houses. They're my favorite. It is extremely hard to scare me unless it's a jump scare. So for me, it's like I go with the intent of, will this scare me? Is this going to be the time?
Mm-hmm. I'm very easy to scare. And now I know that if I was in like a zombie apocalypse, I would be worthless. My knees are collapsed. Like it's gonna
Oh
catch me.
no.
so so
My
don't have me on the team. I'm not good.
uh, my main like contribution to the zombie apocalypse is that I spent several years of my life in the medical field as a medical assistant, so and a surgical tech. So
Oh,
I can
nice.
do that a few things that are pretty helpful in that situation.
Nice. I my degree is actually in animal science, so I studied with vets a lot.
Oh
But
wow.
I don't know how spaying a dog would help you in a zombie apocalypse. I
Oh.
can neuter your pets. That's all I can.
I feel like that's actually very useful. I wouldn't want to be running around with a pregnant dog.
No, that the dog would have to be left, which is really sad.
Yeah, and so having the dog not be pregnant would be preferable.
Yeah, I just feel like I wouldn't. Well, also it depends on the type of apocalypse, right? So
Hmm.
if it's something like The Walking Dead, where they are like actual corpses, um, all you have to do is wait it out, right? Like one summer in Alabama, they're gone. Like
Right,
you're
they're
fine.
gonna molt away.
Yes, yes. If you just stay inside for like 3 months, you're okay. Like everything's fine. And then we just never bury our dead ever again. We just burn them. So
Right?
yeah, so yeah, I mean you're good. But if it's something like more sophisticated, like um like The Last of Us, oh no. Kill me. Like
Oh
don't,
yeah.
I'm not doing that.
The Last of Us terrifies me because it's not like, oh, just a simple virus or anything like that. It is like a full-on mushroom that is taking control and
Yeah.
parasitic, and I'm like, oof, nope.
Not for me. And then I said I was secretive about my work in progress, but in my zombie one, it affects all mammals.
Oh
So
wow.
imagine that. Yeah, imagine a freaking bear
That- Absolutely
coming
not.
at you.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, just no. No, I'm good.
If I want to see a bear, I want to see it at a respectful distance. You know what I mean?
Yep, not a very hungry one, and definitely not a zombie one.
Definitely not a hungry zombie one either.
No, that's not for me. No way.
Okay, so what is the scariest story you've ever heard?
Mm, that one's really hard. I don't know. I'm scared of everything. So I think what affects me most is stories that are that kind of I think about afterwards. So, have you ever seen the movie Hereditary?
I haven't watched it yet, but it is on
Okay,
my long list of things to watch.
that's okay. That movie really got under my skin. I won't spoil it, but there's like an element of like inevitability that always like really gets me. So, like if you are too late to save someone, or you're fighting really hard to change something, and then like you find out that your family has set this up for you and like there was no way for you to ever escape and you've just been struggling in vain, that really gets under my skin.
Oh wow, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like the idea of fate, I guess, is what kind of gets me.
Have you ever seen The Uninvited?
No, I haven't.
So The Uninvited is a psychological thriller, and I saw it in theaters, and I had nightmares every day night for 3 nights
Oh
after.
no.
So it was very scary for me. I'm sure there's somebody out there listening to this going, that movie's not scary at all. Like, it was very scary for me. I really enjoyed it because I love being scared. At least in the fictional sense,
Hmm.
not in like real life. No one wants to deal with real fear.
No.
But yeah, it's a good one. If you ever get a chance to have somebody sit down with you and watch it so they can hold your hand, I suggest it.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down. The Uninvited. I'll watch it in broad daylight at noon.
Good idea. Okay, so is it scarier to see the monster or not see it at all?
Ooh, I think it depends because usually I want to see the monster. Like if it's Godzilla, I want show me Godzilla. Like don't mess around and be like, oh, we're just talking about Godzilla. I want to see Godzilla. So or like King Kong, you know, like I just show me the big giant animal. That's my favorite part of the movie. That's why I came. But if it's like a ghost or like an entity, I think it's much better to draw it out because there's a you can play with the psychological aspect. Like, am I crazy? Am I seeing things? Is this all in my head or am I being paranoid? And then you like, oh, in the third act you see it and you're like, oh, I was right, and also I'm really upset that I'm right because I have to deal with this.
Yeah, like this is real, real.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree. I think my favorite is a combination of the two, that slow, drawn out, and then the exposing the monster at the end. They did that in The Quiet Place and or in A Quiet Place, and
Hmm.
that really, I thought it was just such a perfect like way of leaning into it.
Yeah, but I feel like sometimes if you draw it out too long, like whatever you see, you're gonna be disappointed.
Yeah,
So that's
true.
hard. It's hard. It's a hard balance.
It really is. But if the balance is right, I think it's pretty good that way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But then, of course, there's always the Blair Witch Project, which doesn't show you the monster at all and
Hmm.
is still a terrifying movie. So,
Yeah, I mean it can work on multiple levels.
yeah,
So,
it's really a matter of how you do it.
hmm and then of course, like I think so. In I ran into this problem with my snake book with Monstrous. I call it the snake book for the longest time because it didn't have a title. So, um, that one I my editor was like, maybe we should push the monster reveal back. And I was like, no, because if I hear about this book and I hear that it has a giant talking snake in it, I want to see the snake. But then
Hmm.
I also created more problems for myself because I was like, okay, so then I have to make the snake very interesting. He has to have a character arc. He has to be like a real like integral part of the story. So that was a little bit tough, but I'm very happy with how it turned out.
Oh, I'm glad you're happy with it. I'm excited to read it. I'll probably pick it up with my next paycheck.
Oh well, I hope you enjoy it. Um, it's funny. I will say it's if you're going in super dark, it's not super dark. My debut, Bad Witch Burning, is darker, but it is funny, and there is a romance. So
I love the mixture of genres, so I'm all for it.
yeah. Oh, the romance is not between the girl and the snake,
I
by
did
the way.
not think so. I didn't
Okay,
think
good. I
so.
was like, wait, I should probably clarify.
Somebody out there might have thought so. So good clarification.
Yeah, it's not. They're more like he's like her giant dad, pretty much.
So, what's scarier to you, psychological thrillers or slasher films?
Definitely psychological. I think slashers are like, kind of fun. They're like camp.
Hmm.
And then also like slashers are just very different. The reason I think they work in movies and not slashers, you don't have to develop any characters at all. Like you don't have to know a thing about these people. Like you're just here for the good time. But in books, if you have you introduce a whole bunch of people, that's a problem because people get lost. And then if you try to develop all of them, it's just
Too much work.
yeah, it's a lot to do, and
Hmm.
it's hard to do well. But, and then if you say, okay, I'm going to develop one or two people, then the audience guesses the final girl right away. So it's like I don't know. It's a hard one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that personally, I think slasher films are supposed to be camp and fun.
Yeah, they're supposed to be
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, they're supposed to be like you're waiting to see who's gonna die next type thing. You want to see
Yeah,
what kind
and
the
what kind of kill, right? Like
yeah,
creative.
the what kind of kill, the death. And I think that was with R.L. Stein's Fear Street
Mm-hmm.
movies.
Yeah,
It was definitely about how unique was the kill going to be, and not so much about the story until the third movie.
yeah. Which I think is good because then you kind of cull the people you don't need, and then now you can develop the people that you
Yeah,
do need.
yeah, I think that was done really well. Overall, the movies weren't like it for me, but I think they were written well.
That's good. I need to check those out. I've heard good things. I just haven't seen all of them. So
Yeah, I didn't watch them all back to back. I watched them all slowly, so they're pretty
yeah,
easy
I'll check
to
those out.
yeah, pretty easy to get into. So with all of that being said and done, where can my listeners find your work and you?
You can get Bad Witch Burning and Monstrous wherever books are sold. Books a Million, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, wherever. And I am active on Instagram. It's at Jessica Lewis Author, and also Threads, which is the same. And then I do have a Twitter, but I'm not ever on Twitter anymore. So you know.
Yeah, I'm not
Oh,
on.
and my yeah, it's kind
Mhm,
of
yeah, it's dead.
not good. Then my website is authorjessicalewis.com.
AuthorJessicaLewis.com. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. It's been really great having you on the show and having this talk with you and interviewing you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been listening to Cat Scratch Radio, a horror podcast with your host, Carmilla Mays, also known as Matu C. Lawrence. If you want to find me on social media, just look up MX Carmilla.